to bartend at an old American Legion. Lots of stories that it was haunted, but I never experienced anything until this night. Was closing up the bar and counting out the register. It was around 2:30 a.m. The adding machine starts erroring out and then suddenly flashes 666. At that same exact moment, all the lights in the building started flickering on and off. I ran out of that building as fast as I could. I called my manager and told her there was no way in hell I was going back until the sun came up. For the longest time after, I always made someone hang out with me when I closed up so I wouldn't be alone, but nothing ever happened again. This thread was posted by Reddit user Roasted_Perfection in the Midnight Shift. Employees of Reddit, what's the creepiest experience you've had during your nighttime shift? I used to be a crew chief at IOP during the night shift, but there wasn't a crew lol, it was just me and one cook. One night a man came in and seemed so friendly and insightful. He was telling me about his time as a music producer in LA. He was so polite with me throughout our conversation, something I can't stress enough lol. A few more customers came in, and as I took care of their orders, the man I spoke to started talking to himself and laughing. Then the laughter got louder and louder and almost maniacal. He then went on a huge rant about the world, but he shouted in different pitches throughout the rant, even disturbingly changing his facial expressions. He scared off two of the other patrons and I had to call the cops. Frown. When they showed up, his whole demeanor went back to normal and he politely walked out with the police but looked back at me and winked. I was scared the whole night. Edit. Wow, I've never experienced this kind of interaction on Reddit. I wanna clear something up though. I only had to call the cops because I asked him multiple times to settle down because he was legit scaring the other customers, and there goes my hustle lol. The man was indeed employed with Sony. He handed me a business card with his hotel number written on the back. I really enjoyed our conversation and it just added to my shock when I saw him short circuit and flip pancakes. I worked at IOP graveyards for 7 years. The fights during the bar rush were next level with 3 bars nearby. I delivered a baby in the bathroom, hand to God I'm not joking. But the all-time most IOP thing ever was a fight that broke out in the smoking section back when that still existed and the glass walls still separated smoking from non-smoking. So there's like 10 people in there, drunk, loud, laughing, my kind of night. Out of nowhere stuff starts flying and I get immersed with the bosenberry syrup in the fucking head. Before the cops show up, every single syrup container has been thrown and there's syrup dripping from the ceiling. My manager was like, please don't quit, just go home, just take tomorrow off. I had to hose myself off with a garden hose before I got in my car. It's hysterical now, but if I even smell a hint of bosenberry I immediately get straight up hostile. Syrup is like litter, you never can get olive cleaned up and everything is sticky forever. Syrup getting in your eyes is extremely painful, who would have ever guessed that? Oh, and in 7 years we got robbed 3 times. Around the 3rd time I was like, please just shoot me, this job is literally killing me anyway. I'm a cab driver in a small mountain town. I've seen a plainclothes police officer hit in the head with a skateboard by a young teen having a psychotic episode. He died from his injuries later. I've seen a cougar running up the main street hissing at every movement. I've seen a man get into my cab wearing a huge unsheathed machete strapped to his leg and ramble about in a deranged fashion until he told me to pull over and he ran away. All these things are not necessarily scary as the occultish type things you hear about night shift, but they were still scary. I'm a female cab driver by the way, and yes, I carry pepper spray. I used to deliver pizzas in high school in the mid-90s before GPS and Google Maps. I lived in the same small-ass town my whole life and could have probably delivered pizzas blindfolded. We stayed open till 1 a.m. on weekends. I was one of the only females that delivered till close because I wasn't cute and could handle late-night drunks. So I get this order basically 30 seconds after we stopped taking orders, and I decided to go ahead and do the delivery. It was way out in the country. I don't think we've ever got an order from there. So I drive out there, and when I turned down the dirt road I immediately felt something off about the whole thing. The road was barely drivable and kept getting more and more narrow. I drive all the way to the end and there's no houses, no lights, nothing, so I turn around and drive back slowly to just make sure I didn't miss anything. My headlights hit something white on the side of the road that hadn't been there before, and my creepy meter starts screaming. It moves, it's a person crawling into the road wearing white. So I tear off to go get help. I come back with the cop friend. We get back to the exact spot and he informed me there weren't any houses out there and to stay in the car while he draws his gun and starts checking it out. After a few minutes he comes running back to his car calling for backup. He tells me there's blood and teeth on the road. Yeah, I was basically paralyzed, but I'm not leaving him there alone. So I lock my doors and reposition my car so that I'm not in the way of incoming police, and my headlights hit a man stumbling toward my car with no bottom jaw. I honk and scream for my friend and this guy falls on the hood of my car. Turns out this guy owed drug money to the wrong people. They took him out there and shot him in the face. They thought he was dead and left. He came to missing the lower part of his face and couldn't see, so he just kept walking hoping he'd run into someone before he bled out. He later died in surgery the next day. The creepy part hit when I came back with a bloody hood and cold pizza without payment. Police pulled phone records and there was no incoming calls logged during the time period my manager took the order. But I know the phone rang and listened to her take the order because I was kind of mad about the time. I could hear the male voice talking to my manager, but they could never find any record of call or the number it came from. I quit the next day. I still have nightmares about that night, and I get sick feeling when I smell pizza to this day 25 years later. They never found out who the man was that died because he had no ID or tattoos and there wasn't much of his face left. Probably an illegal immigrant. Night shift at a hospital I used to work at. Get report at beginning of shift. Patient is non-verbal due to dementia. Literally the report I get is they have such advanced dementia that they haven't spoken an intelligible word in several years, just mostly grunting and moaning. This hospital was old, very old, tiny rooms, kind of a dark place at night. I'm basically trying to get this person's heart rhythm under control for most of my 12 hours night shift. It's 2:30 a.m. I've been running a cardiac drip on this person for hours trying to get things under control. Then all of a sudden I see a lethal rhythm on the monitor, touch, briefly, and go into the room to check on the patient. Look at monitor again, the rhythm is now totally normal. The power in the entire building flickers very briefly and the patient says in perfect clear English, "I was born in 1895, I need to go home." And repeats it several times. To my absolute horror, I go get another nurse and patient is now muttering unintelligible sounds again as they had been when I assessed at beginning of shift. Shit you not, this really happened. I didn't or don't believe in ghosts, but this incident made me wonder for several months after. Who knows, maybe it was just a coincidence and the multiple meds they were on. I was 3 months into being a driver graveyard shift for a well-known company. Anyways, never got an uneasy feeling at this job site or warehouse ever. But this one night about 2 a.m. felt off. I could shake it. It was like I was being watched, but I was the only one at the warehouse and we do have security that would watch us on CCTV. The security isn't on site. Literally a warehouse that we keep products in and ship back out. Anyways, back to me feeling weird about 2 a.m. as I was alone picking up more items to run back out to stores. I kept shaking this feeling off. I'd pause, look around the parking lot outside and the other surrounding warehouses. There was not a single sound, just crickets and wind. I felt off. I decided to roll down the warehouse doors and secure my truck and step inside to take a leak. I was in the bathroom inside and actually end up having to poop when my phone alerts me. It's security. I ignore the first 3 calls. 4th call I pick up. "Mr. Steam Shovel, we've detected movement at the warehouse inside. Are you secure? Where is your current position?" I tell them I'm not in the warehouse and doors are all secure. They make note the alarm system is active and doors outside the warehouse are closed, etc. I'm wrapping up pooping and I get the goosebumps. They said they would check the cameras and call me back to stay put. I finish up and look out through the doors to the warehouse. It's empty besides product. Doors are definitely secured, nothing's unlocked. You couldn't get in, trust me. They call back, "Mr. Steam Shovel, we've detected movement again. The sensors are saying there's movement in the warehouse. Are you currently inside the warehouse?" I'm literally looking outside the warehouse at this point. Nothing is there. I report back, nothing is there. Again I have the chills. Anyways, throat is lumpy. Talking on the phone with security, I decided to leave the warehouse and do my run. Quickly I run to my truck and take off. I'm gone for about 2 hours and they call me once saying again movement detected, and they don't seem to see anything on the 1,000,000+ cameras. I arrive back with some cardboard boxes we have to break down into different bins. I'm by myself this time in the actual warehouse and I get this feeling I'm being watched. Can't describe it, but it's like someone was around the corner just staring at me. I couldn't shake it. I finished up my work. I get a text message before my shift that day from my boss saying we need to talk before my shift. Long story short, he tells me someone died in the warehouse 10 or so years ago and it's haunted. We walked out to the warehouse and right where I felt uneasy at the bins, he stopped without me saying anything and said, "This is where I always feel someone is watching me." I never had another experience besides that night. I worked as a locomotive engineer for Amtrak for 37 years. I just recently retired. I drove most of the lines that came out of Los Angeles. That particular night, it was the summer of '97, I was driving the Sunset Limited. The train runs through the desert on its way to Florida, so with no one around for hours I was doing double the speed since we left LA late due to a mechanical problem. It's about 3 a.m. I'm talking to my conductor about how Jordan just won another finals. I'm doing about 90 mph now. I happen to just light a cig and look out my window and see weird lights coming up from a ridge near us. I saw one bright orange light, then a second. A mini light, later a third. Me knowing we were outside of Phoenix, I said to myself it had to be planes leaving the airport, or F-16s doing a routine training mission. I didn't pay much mind, but it bothered me since planes always have beacons and navigation lights. These orbs, I'd call them, seem to move around in ways that weren't humanly possible. We're still driving when my conductor suddenly moves near the windshield, points to something and says, "Holy shit, WTF, is that a black triangle?" I'd estimate the size of football field was over the ridge where we had last seen the orbs and stayed there motionless. We were stunned. After a few minutes it started moving at the same speed as our train, moving closer and closer. I couldn't tell if it was silent since the locomotive I was driving was being operated at high RPMs. The ship passed on top of us slowly. I could see the same colored orbs under the ship I had seen before at the ridge, but other than that nothing else, since it was pretty much impossible to really get out my seat and look. It was just pure black. As the ship hovered above us, we started to lose communication with the dispatcher and I started losing power from the train's generator. They seemed to study us for about a minute and then took a sharp 90-degree turn and accelerated at high speed northwest towards Las Vegas. That's when the train suddenly started to operate back to normal. Our dispatcher called us thinking we had derailed since he heard nothing but static from our end. It freaks me out because I know it had to be a UFO. There is no other explanation for something that big moving that slow. I was a skeptic and never believed anything about the paranormal, but after seeing what I did for those brief 30 minutes, my life changed forever. A few years ago I realized my experience had happened only a few months after the famous Phoenix lights, where huge UFOs were also seen by thousands in Phoenix, Arizona, including military and law enforcement personnel. I've seen my fair shares of creepy things driving trains late at night, but that topped it.